Welcome to my channel Living Linux. In this video I'm going to tell you how I wrote a fresh image on the Lichee console because it stopped booting properly. Perhaps it ran out of disk space. I asked Sipeed if it is possible to boot from microSD or USB, but they said at the moment that's not possible. So yeah, it wasn't possible to do any rescue attempts from a micro SD or USB stick. So the only thing I could do was write a fresh image. So you can go to the wiki, and here you can see that you can download the image from Baidu or Mega. So I downloaded it from Mega. So you have the file lcon4a Lichee Console. Perhaps they will update this in the future. So I'm using the image from the 27th of December. When you download the zip file and you extract it, you also need the uboot file. And you have to be aware that there's a difference between the model with the 16 gigabytes of RAM and the 8 gigabytes of RAM. So I have the 8 gigabytes of RAM, so I went with this uboot file. Now, once you have the files, then there's a procedure to burn it on the Lichee console itself. So on the bottom, there's the slot for the SSD. So you need to remove one screw, and then you can open the slot for the SSD. And it has two buttons. One is for reset, that one is the closest to the screw, and the boot button that is closest to the hinge. So you have to keep this boot button pressed, keep it pressed, and then power it on with the power button on the keyboard on the other side. Keep them both pressed for a couple of seconds. I assume that you can see that it started when the backlight switches on. Nothing else will happen on the screen. So as soon as you see the backlight, then you can release the buttons. Then from, let's just say, the host machine, you can connect a USB cable to the USB-C port of the Lichee console. You need to program fastboot. So on Linux, you can just do sudo apt install fastboot. And then you can execute these commands. I had to execute them with sudo because you need elevated writes. You don't need to specify any USB ports or devices or whatever. You can just execute them as they are here. The only thing is that when you're writing the uboot file and you're writing the boot partition and the root partition, you have to be in the directory where these files are, or otherwise you have to specify the directory. Especially writing the root partition, that can take a while. Give it several minutes. You might think nothing is happening, but especially with these kinds of commands, don't give up too quick. Give it really several minutes, let's just say 50 minutes, something like that. And then hopefully it should be done by then. Let's just say after an hour, if nothing really happens, then yeah, you have to contact Sipeed to see what is wrong. So at the end, you can push the reset button and you should be good to go. Or at least that's what I thought. I did notice that some things were not correctly set up. For instance, perhaps some people saw the previous video where you could see that during boot that initially the screen is still in portrait mode. Now, when I use this image, when you boot it into the XFCE desktop environment, the display was still in portrait mode. So you can go to the settings, and then you can change the rotation. So in this case, yeah, I think it's the DSI 1. So you can just select right, and I think this is not really, yeah, this is the HDMI output, so there's no rotation needed there. So I thought like, okay, that's fixed. But then it turned out that the touchscreen was still in portrait mode. So that's also where I remembered that I think you have a shell script, and probably it will look something like this, where you can rotate the touchscreen. Yeah, these numbers, they were a little bit hard to find. In the end, yeah, it's perhaps a coincidence, but for instance, the PineTap 2 seems to have the same touchscreen, and someone also probably had an issue with that, and here you can see these numbers. So you can put that in a shell script like this. I will also put it in the description of the video, and you have to make sure that the file is allowed to run as a program. And what you also can do is, if you go to the settings, session and startup, application auto start. So yeah, so here I added one entry. So you can just give it a name, you can give it a description, you can point it to the shell script that you want to start. The trigger is on login. And that should be it. I did notice that sometimes with a reset, the red touch pointer on the keyboard sometimes didn't respond, but let's just say shutting down and starting again, that should fix it. One other thing that I wanted to have was the battery indicator. So that wasn't there by default. So if you go to the power manager, you can enable the system tray icon. So hopefully I am back just like the original image. I'm still busy doing some tests. So that is something for another video. Yeah, it's a good thing that now I know how to write a fresh image on the Lichee console. So if I mess things up, then at least I know I can go back to a fresh image. So that's all for now. and I hope to see you again in my next video.